Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Rick dropping in on you. I hope everybody is closing out your year strong. Hopefully, everything is going in a direction that you are at least content with it going. If not, it's up to you to make the changes. Um, if you followed me, you know that for decades I have been boots on the ground, pushing and fighting and studying and researching and developing for decades to be a contributor to the elevation of my people. And one thing that you know about me is that I'm immensely honest about my assessments. It doesn't mean I'm perfect. It just means I'm going to tell you the truth about what I see at any given moment. If there's something that comes along that changes my perspective, then I will definitely come back and I will address it. I have no problems printing or recording retractions. My goal is not to be a celebrity. My goal is not to be liked. Uh, Obviously, increasing subscriberships increases my reach and impact. But my goal is to disseminate truth to the best of my ability, to empower my people to develop systems, to develop programs, to develop ideas that lend to our empowerment. As you know, we are in the midst of a fundraiser to be able to create a national network for our programs, whether it be Black Men Lead, whether it be our programs for uh, domestic abuse, whether it be our programs for childhood sexual abuse, whether it be our mental health programs, whether it be our research center, which I head. We need support. We love to talk about revolution. We love to talk about Black empowerment, but we lack the cohesiveness, the togetherness, the willingness to pour into and support the things that will elevate us. We gravitate towards sensationalism. We gravitate towards things that allow us to practice escapism in some way. That's why we're so heavily invested in um, what happens with celebrities, because we live vicariously through celebrities. We live through their successes. We live through their experiences. We become extremely connected to their reality because we are not experiencing the reality that we need to experience. Again, I'm challenging everybody who watches this video to support the work we do. Um, if you need to learn more about the organization, there are links in the description box that'll take you back and show you what we've been doing for years. This isn't something that just popped up on the radar. While I don't have a huge subscribership, at one point we were almost at 20 and got zapped and had to start over, and we've never gotten back to that. And but the reason I don't have a huge subscribership is I'm not about sensationalism. I don't jump on trends. I'm not trying to create viral content. I'm trying to tell you what I see based on my level of expertise, based on what I've done. I've given you my heart over the years. My first book to my 25th book. I'm now writing my 26th. I've given the insight into the absence of the Black man. There are 1.5 million Black men missing. That comes at a price. I gave you that in the first volume I wrote, The Invisible Father, Reversing the Curse of a Fatherless Generation. When we look at the disintegration of the Black family, it is a devastating force. And because we have not arrested this force, because we have not stopped it, we have watched the decimation of the Black family nucleus over the last 55 to 60 years. We have gone from 1960, where over 75% of children were born in the two-parent households, and that has almost reversed itself. We have to look at the dynamic. We have to look at what it shows us. We have to look at the fact that while the idea of success floats around, while we see images of success, while we are convinced that we are doing better, the numbers don't reflect it. We're still at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder. We see a widening of the wealth gap. Instead of closing the wealth gap, we have widened it. Home ownerships for Blacks have not moved since the 60s. We're still at 41%. That's a problem when you're talking about building wealth. Matter of fact, talking about building wealth, my 25th book, which was just re-released in its revised version this week, talks about all the different mechanisms and machinations that were put in play that held us at bay and limited our ability to build wealth collectively. But it also points to ways that we can right now as individuals and as a collective start changing that narrative. But we have to change our thinking. We think as consumers, we think and we're impressed with symbolism. They just simply give us a symbol of success, symbol of belonging, symbol of being liked, and we take it and run with it. The symbol doesn't have with it or carry with it value. I have addressed in great depth and detail the push and the agenda to emasculate the Black male image. I have recorded it in my writings. I have recorded it in my lectures. I have created programs to help socialize young Black males so they have a sense of identity, a sense of purpose, a sense of direction. These programs are implemented and used where we have the resources and the reach. We need to expand it. We need a national network where we have the ability to create and racially socialize and create a rite of passage for young Black males that establishes and defines Black manhood. That's something else we lack. We lack a universal definition of what Black manhood is. We have far too many people defining manhood based on their strengths and not on the demand and the need for what we are supposed to be doing in our communities. We have issues with our women. Something that started with me 20 years ago, and when I was dealing with clients and I was noticing there was some a theme going on, that a vast majority, I mean a large majority of the women who were coming into the vast majority of the women who were coming in to see me were dealing with issues of childhood sexual abuse, meaning that before the age of 18, they had experienced some form of sexual abuse. And in many times it was from someone who should have been protecting them. It was so prominent that I actually contacted others to find out if it was just something I was seeing or was it a real phenomenon. And my question was to my dude, man, is this happening with you? Or is it just that every Black woman who has ever been molested is coming to me? He said, no, I'm saying the same thing. So I started to look for information on it. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of data on it. So I started pushing for research. I started to do it, but I also started to push for others to do research. And what we find is on the conservative end, 40% of our women are experiencing some form of childhood sexual abuse. And on the liberal end, depending on, and this depends on the study and a bunch of other things that can come into play, but we're talking 60%. And this is just in childhood sexual abuse. This is not about the neglect. This is not about other forms of domestic abuse. This is solely on that level. And here's the thing that nobody wants to talk about. 1 in 8 boys report being sexually abused as a minor. So imagine when you take into consideration that males are less likely to report it because of the stigma that goes with it, that number is probably higher. When we ask you to support the work we're doing, we're not just talking about what we sit up and we do on this channel. When I get off of this video, it's back to work. It's back to working with kids that are struggling with identity, struggling with self-esteem. I have several who are struggling with suicidal ideations. They're all Black children. And I'm saying children, they're in their teens, the ones that I'm talking about, some in their early 20s. But the thing is, we are dealing with a crisis that we don't want to talk about and we don't want to get involved in. And the bottom line is we can't consistently say that our children are our future and then turn around and not completely invest in protecting them and preparing them and empowering them to be able to withstand the forces that are moving against them. There is a constant bombardment of information flowing through the devices that we give our kids to take their attention and time so that we can be free and do what we need to do. That is misdirecting them, misassigning ideas, planting seeds of inferiority, planting seeds of doubt, misdirecting their sense of identity, and it is having a catastrophic result. We're talking about a situation where blacks used to talk about blacks don't kill themselves. Now, the truth of the matter is, blacks have killed themselves, but not at the rate that would be the norm. We tended to understand how to navigate hardships. We had been through plenty. But what I can tell you is right now, today, little black girls ages 5 to 13 are in the #1 slot for suicide. 5 to 13, we're losing our babies. What I can tell you is overall, over the last 5 years, we have had a 30% increase in suicides within the black community. What I can tell you is that in that same time, we have seen a 49% increase in suicides among black males between the ages of 14 and 24. And we're seeing it in a bunch of different places, but this is where we're seeing it explode, and there's a reason for it. It's not just some phenomenon. It's that we are not creating the right environment. We are not properly preparing people to cope with what they're facing. We are trusting our children to these devices. These devices are flooding their mind with ideas that their reality doesn't match up with. That's creating depressions. That's creating other forms of psychosis. And we're sitting up and we're thinking it's okay. We're slowly being lulled into new ideas that we have never agreed with, we have never co-signed, and now we're co-signing. And we've even gotten to the point where we're fighting for certain things that we didn't, one point in time, we didn't even believe in, because that's how this system of influence works. That's how the media operates. That's how propaganda works. I've written intentionally on that, but I've also developed programs that allow us to counter these measures by the way we engage our children, by the way we engage one another, by the way we set up things. My thing is, while we're sitting up and being consumed by celebrity gossip, being consumed by what's going on with this person, we are being blindsided by efforts to annihilate us by way of social decline, by way of economic impotence, by way of disunity and destruction and total decimation of the black family unit. When I talk to you about this stuff, I may mention it in passing, but what you should understand, if you've read any of my books, you can see the amount of study and research that goes into me trying to understand where we come from, standing on some of the shoulders of some of the great minds that came before me and saying, let me take the mantle and take it a little bit further. Let me dig a little bit deeper. Let me examine some nuances and see what I see. And then coming back and saying, hey, here's the problem. And when anything that I present to you as a challenge means that to me it has met the criteria to be beyond to meet statistical significance. And when we in science, when we're talking about statistical significance, we're talking about something that occurs at a rate or frequency that coincidence cannot explain it, meaning that coincidences don't happen that often. It happens once, it happens twice, okay. But if it happens XYZ, and everything has a different margin for it to be met, for it to be statistically significant. But what we have to be willing to understand and deal with is the fact that we have far too many things. I've talked to you about epigenetics. I've talked to you about generational trauma. I've talked to you about the fact that we're not adequately dealing with our traumatic history. We're not dealing with our trauma. We're literally still passing down generational trauma. We're passing it down through social learning theory. We're passing it down through epigenetics. We're passing it down through re-injury. We're not protecting ourselves from external forces right now because we're too preoccupied with things that have no intrinsic value. We're not literally looking and studying and trying to gain an understanding of the values, the interests, and the principles that we can build upon upon to become a powerful collective so that we can stand on our own, so that we can move on our own, so that we can strengthen our own. I've written on the miseducation of Black youth in America. I've lectured on it. Those books have actually gone into some college institutions and become a part of a class. Look, here's the thing, and this is something that I have spoken on and declared for years. When we talk about educating a child, those who follow me have heard me say this thousands of times, literally. When we're talking about educating a child, we're not talking simply about the attainment of academic skills. That's the illusion. That's the lie. That's how they get you caught up. When we talk about educating a Black child, we're talking about the preparation, preparing the kid, empowering the kid to go out into a world as an adult and go out into a world that is inherently hostile towards them and not only compete but win. So where does education start? Education starts in the empowerment of self-identity. You can't have power if you don't know who you are, because if you don't have a sense of identity, you're constantly looking for someone to define you. When you don't have a sense of identity, you're searching for someone to accept you. So you try to fit into the molds and the notions that they present to you that you should fit in. You're trying to be what they say you need to be in order for them to accept, validate, and approve you. Well, and oftentimes, if someone is benefiting from your mediocre existence, they're not going to point you in the direction of empowerment. So what you have to do is be aware of who you are. We are not preparing our children before we unleash them or we expose them to the world. We're sitting up and expecting their teachers to do it. We're expecting the clergy to do it. We're expecting the system that is going to exploit them to do it. That is not how we empower our children. We empower our children by saying, look, we're going to come together and we're going to develop a universal understanding and a universal standard of what is. We're going to talk about what you're going to become. We're going to talk about what's necessary. We're going to not only socialize you, we're going to racially socialize you so that you're prepared to meet the force that's going to move against you solely because you're a Black person. We're going to teach you to withstand the suggestions of inferiority. We're going to teach you to withstand the suggestions of not being beautiful and accepted. We're going to show you the beauty within yourself. You will understand the exceptional strengths that you possess as an individual. This is what we have to be able to do. So when I'm asking for support, I'm not talking about something just thrown out there. I'm talking about thousands upon thousands upon thousands of hours of research, program development, program implementation, and a need to expand that. When J. Edgar Hoover in the 60s was asked what the greatest threat to national security was, we're in the middle of a Cold War with the Soviet Union, but he does not mention them. We are constantly at odds with almost every nation in the Middle East, but he doesn't mention them. We've had a major conflict going on with Cuba, with the Cuban Missile Crisis, and we're at odds with its leader, Fidel Castro, but he doesn't mention Cuba. And you know what he says? He says the greatest threat to national security is Black unity. And this is why they created programs like COINTELPRO, where they went in and infiltrated the Black Nationalist Party, the Black Panther Party. This is how Fred Hampton ended up killed in his sleep, is they were so afraid of us unifying. And what they'll talk about is the radical nature of the group, but they won't talk about the unifying nature of the group when they're talking about its history. They'll talk about Black Panthers carrying guns and weapons, but they won't talk about Black Panthers feeding the children in their neighborhoods. They won't talk about Black Panthers sitting up and having programs like WIC to make sure the people in the community were fed, homed, housed, utilities paid. They won't talk about those programs because then you start to get ideas. See, the power didn't come from the gun. The power came from the willingness to love on our people at a level that says we are not going to allow you to sit here and suffer. We're going to come together. We're going to think. We're going to unite. We're going to plant. That was a threat. And they weren't happy until they completely destroyed both of those parties. It's our responsibility to pick up the mantle. It's our responsibility to create programs. It's our responsibility to take the the impotence in holistically educating our youth. When I talk about these programs, the energy, the passion, the pain, the struggle is real. This isn't something I jumped on. This is something I've been walking in since 1985 at the age of 16, when I saw Francis Cress, 17, and when I saw that Francis Cress Welsing um, on the Phil Donahue show. And she was defending her Crest theory of color confrontation. And you would have to have been alive at this time and of some age to really understand the magnitude of what was happening. And I was an overly and advanced observationist at that particular point. I wasn't the average kid. I was reading more than the average kid. I was studying more than the average kid. I wanted to know answers. You couldn't tell me just because. You couldn't tell me because I said so. I needed to know. And I was a headache everywhere I went, in the church, in the school, because I had questions. And Dr. Welsing was answering the questions, but more importantly, she was doing it on the heels of a movement where there was a suggestion of intellectual inferiority among African Americans. That was a move to use IQ scores to suggest that blacks were substantially less intelligent than whites based off IQ scores. It was eventually disproved and debunked. I've also addressed it in new pushes to try and attempt it again in work I did 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. It's out there. Look it up. But here's what I looked at. I watched a black female in the midst of her white male counterparts, all of them with PhDs and doctorate degrees. And she was defending it. Not only was she defending it, she was holding her own, and she was establishing the fact that she was intellectually capable to make the assertion she was making. And at that moment, I decided psychology is where I'm going. But what it did is it pointed me to a fact that there is a force that is constant, that is moving against my people. And from there, I learned about Neely Fuller Jr. I learned about Dr. Naeem Akbar. I learned about Dr. Amos Wilson. I learned about Dr. Yosef Ben Yakin. I learned about Dr. John Heinrich Clark. I learned about Asa Hilliard. And I just began to consume, and I started to study. And I started to look at what Dr. Naeem Akbar was doing in the dissection and the breaking down of Eurocentric psychology for the purpose of building something specifically for our people. And I said, that's what needs to happen. You can't fix black problems with a white way of thinking. And so I took that on, and Dr. Amos Wilson took me to a whole nother place. But what I'm trying to get you to understand is I've been working on this thing. I've been looking at it, but it comes at a price. It comes at a price. And I'm not just talking about money here. I'm talking about when you're looking at something you care about and you're watching it self-destruct, it hurts. When you're looking at something you care about and they're completely impervious or unaware of what's happening, and they are just moving along. It's like watching cows being moved through the channels on the way to slaughter. Some of them are sensing it. They can sense the energy. They can smell death, and they're trying to reverse. But the push is so strong by those who are just lost that they can't even escape it. And all are being led to death. And we are being led to destruction because we won't stand up. We won't stand up. We won't get behind anything. And let me tell you something. I'm going to be very honest with you, and I'm going to talk about this. Then I'm going to shut it down. Look. Anything that actually works in empowering the Black community will not be heavily funded. Definitely will not be funded by government programs, and it will not be funded by nonprofit and nonprofit organizations. The nonprofit industrial complex has been very, very successful in redirecting funds away from programs that actually work, and you being used to do everything under the sun. We have been got over and over and over again by large organizations that put on a great display. They give you all the images. Here's the problem. When you look at something and you say, okay, they're getting X amount of millions of dollars a year, and they're saying they're doing this. And here we are 10 years into it, and things have gotten worse. then the program doesn't work. I don't care how much money you put into it. They'll throw money into it. Guess what? The money flows back because of the way the system is set up. They'll throw money into it. The money comes back to them. And then they sit up and make it seem like we're investing in you guys. But guess what? When we allow that to be the narrative, when we allow that to be what we are focusing and what we're looking on, here's the problem with that. Not only are we not getting the funding that we need, what's happening is they're going to turn around and use that narrative. We poured 2.3 billion into a program and it only got worse. And then the narrative starts to become, that's just who they are. They're naturally violent. They're never going to rise up out of the pits of poverty. They are poor thinkers. They are writing this narrative, and we are allowing it to happen because we won't take the reins of our sovereignty, the reins of our responsibility. We won't invest in our own energy and efforts. You got people who are blood, sweat, and tears. One of the things that broke my heart, I mean, something terrible. I thank God for Amari Stoudemire, the former NBA basketball player, for stepping up. But when Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen passed away at 96, he was in a nursing home in New York. Uh, um, somebody had to step forward and pay for it. The man who gave you the look inside of African civilization, the man who gave you the peep inside of Kemet, the man who showed you a heritage that had been hidden from you. He poured everything he had into it till he had nothing left. And I can just name them. And then you wonder why some of our great minds sell out, because they made up in their minds they're not going to die poor. They made up in their minds they're not going to consistently fund on something that people, number one, aren't really receiving. Number two, even when they receive it, they don't appreciate it. Number three, they won't get behind it. I've been doing this now, like I said, for decades. I literally shut down the Odyssey Entertainment Group to found the Odyssey Project. I took myself out of one world because it was self-serving, and I put it into a world of service and sacrifice. I have not regretted it 1 second since. But again, it came at a price. I have stuck my head in books and papers and researches and studies hours on end to find that I brought you collective cognitive dominance theory. I gave you the influence of epigenetics on not only trauma, but disease. What's crazy is when I started to study epigenetics, it was discovered by me looking for solidification and validation beyond what always existed. And don't get me wrong, Dr. Joy DeGruy did an unbelievable job with post-traumatic slave syndrome and explaining generational trauma, but there were still pushes, and I wanted to go deeper, so I needed to understand, because people were saying it's been 100+ years and you're still talking about slavery. What, you're still talking about trauma? What's really going on? And so I decided to really try to bring it forth and explain it and look into it. And I was pushed into the world of epigenetics, and I spend a lot of time dealing with it now because it's directly connected to adverse childhood experiences, something that I'm extremely passionate about because of the long-term health implications of adverse childhood experiences. But what we found out was not only can trauma be passed down genetically through epigenetic tags, the epigenetic influence on genes, turning genes on, turning genes off, or what we call upregulating and downregulating genes, will also turn on genes, also turn on and create disease. Diseases like cancer are from having cancer genes upregulated, while the genes that fight against cancer genes are downregulated, turned off. And now you're dealing with cancer that comes from stress. predominantly from some form of stress, fear, anxiety, and worry, are creating a great deal of the illnesses. That's autoimmune illnesses like lupus as well. It's so many different things that we are not aware of that I've been championing, that I've been fighting. One of the things that I've probably been most passionate with, and I'll be done here, is the work in the Black community with Black boys. Why? Because we have 1.5 million Black men missing. 1.2 of them are in prison. While we as Black men make up about 6% of the population, we make up 40% of the prison population. We are the largest group in America in prison, even though we are only 6% of the total population. Now, here's the thing. That 1.5 million men missing creates a gap that is necessary for the modeling of proper manhood. We have another part of the population who has never had proper manhood model, and so they are not good models, and so they are being put out in front, and then they are being cast, they are being paraded out in front of our boys, and so now our boys believe that there's some benefit to having street cred, there's some benefit to having prison time, having done a bid, there's some credibility and validation in having someone fear you. So instead of really truly developing an understanding of respect, they have decided to implement a campaign of fear. And what it has led to is us destroying us. And it's also overflowed into how we treat our women. The second leading cause of death from Black females between the age of 15 to 44, intimate partner homicide. The vast majority of those partners are of African descent, are African American. What am I getting at? I'm saying that Black Men Lead is not just a program that racially socializes. It's a program that provides stability. It's a program that provides answer. It's a way of coming. One of with everything that I have to deal with on a professional level as a business owner, on a professional level as an organization director, on a personal level with a lot of things going on this year. One of the bright spots in my day is to have a young brother reach out and say, hey, this is going on. Can we talk? That tells me instead of going out and making the wrong decision, they're going to allow me to lead. That comes from trust. That comes from me being invested. That comes from me doing it. This does not happen overnight. I've been doing it for a long time. I always come to you, and I know you hear stuff enough, you start to ignore it. I come to you consistently saying, we need you to contribute. We need you to support. We need to do this. There's nothing you can go out there in the world and do that has any value that you don't have to invest in, that you don't have to put some skin in the game. It simply doesn't happen. But we will come here and we will expect the people who have the answer to figure it out. We'll click the like button, we'll share, we'll big up, we'll clap, we'll talk about it. But when it comes down to saying, you know what, this is what's going on. Here's my last thing. We can't keep, and you've heard me say this earlier this week, we can't keep financing our oppression by spending billions into the white economy while starving our warriors, our freedom fighters, our scholars, our teachers, our community leaders. Can't do it. You're never going to achieve power. You're never going to achieve power that way. Every year, 45 plus billion on candy on Halloween. Blacks. I'm just talking about the black dollar. Another 45 or 50 billion for Thanksgiving. The black dollar. Another 453 billion. You heard me. Billion. Christmas holidays. Vast majority of that spent into the white. The very economy that we say is oppressing us, the very economy that says discriminating against us. I have said this so long. We are the only people in the history of mankind that has financed our own demise. We'll sit up and we will buy and buy and buy. Why? Because we have been conditioned to believe that the things we buy are tantamount to reflecting our success or tantamount to success. So because I'm pushing the Benz, I'm successful. I'm accepted. I'm not looking at the future ramifications of spending that much money on a vehicle based off of what I own. I'm not telling you what you should or should not buy. I'm saying there should be a real true method to the madness outside of saying I have something that represents something. There's nothing wrong if you want luxury because you like luxury and you like the things it can do. Hey, but you should have a plan. It shouldn't rob your children. It shouldn't put you in a bind. You shouldn't. There's some things. Look, 2.5 billion a year on Jordans, blacks. Again, I just told you 500 or something billion a year during the holiday season from Halloween to New Year's. We are at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder, meaning that whites have roughly 10 times more median household wealth than we do. They're somewhere around 170,000, depending on the study you look at. But somewhere 176,000, somewhere we're around 17,000. And that can fluctuate higher or lower on both sides. But that's the reality. The wealth gap is widening, yet we buy twice as many Mercedes as whites. Because that's our way of feeling power. That's our way. I'll show them I made it. And the thing is, you have made it when you can financially sustain yourself in your future, which is your progeny, your offspring. How are they being protected? How are they being prepared? What are they dealing with? What are they going through? Let me tell you something. I go hard in the paint for my people. I've done it since before I was an adult. It's just in my DNA. I know no other way. And what's important to me is leaving a legacy. I want my great great grandchildren and their grandchildren to know who I was by the work I left behind, by the impact that I made on the world. And so I work and I push. But what I'm trying to get each of you to understand is that it's our responsibility to sit up and make a difference in our communities. When you have a program like the Odyssey Project that has a research arm, a think tank, programs that are designed to meet the most challenging problems in the community head on, it behooves to get behind it. It behooves to grow it. And my thing is, I'm 55. At some point, I want to be able to hand this off to somebody and say everything you need to take it to the next level is that you got the support you need, you got the people, and have them take off with it, and me become a voice of wisdom, me to step in the background. I told you I don't need the pats on the back. I don't need everybody shouting my name. I don't need nobody saying that was Doc's idea. I know my work will speak for me. My legacy is secure. What I want is for us to win. I need your help. I need your help. We are pushing to close out the year this year by raising $10,000. The last time I made the announcement, I'll be honest with you, raised $52. And I don't know how that comes across when I say it, but I'm not a person that ever sits up and worries about being offensive because I love too hard. When you love too hard, when you're there for people, when you do things, when you have fought new tooth and nails to touch and be a healing force in everything that you can see that is wrong, you have no problem speaking the truth because it's not coming from a place of hate or being mean. It's just being honest. I'm challenging you. Share the video, like the video, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, because I bring content daily. I empower daily, but we need you to give. We need you to give. We need communication. Mary Peoples, that degree in agriculture is going to be so huge because that's going to be a major cog in the wheel of self-sufficiency and health. We've got to really truly get into that and understand what's going on. Just finding healthy soil to cultivate is challenging in this day and time. But we have to have people who have the knowledge, who have the insight to make all this happen. My goal is to create a national network that allows us to properly socialize our youth, teach the principles of wealth development and going. My latest book, The Wall, Black Wealth, Breaking the Code of Wealth. The link for that book is in the description box. Look, I'm giving you everything I got. I'm giving you everything I got. And I'm going to continue to do that. That's who I am. But I'm saying when we talk about helping, we're talking about it from a place of this is what's necessary. You can't sit back. We'll flood different things because of the promotion it gets. But we have to ask ourselves, how much does supporting this actually support and help the Black community? I'm not going to call out any names or any type of situations, but we have a way of being, and they know that. They amp it up. They fill their pockets with our money by throwing symbols up that we will respond to. Meanwhile, we still struggle and our people still are in decline. It's our responsibility to say, hey, look, this doesn't have a whole lot of flashing lights. It's not being big up the whole lot of place, but I've watched this dude do this for X amount of time. I've watched this. Hell, some of you have brought your kids to me. Some of you have personally come to me, and I have worked with you. We need to be able to depend on the community to help the community. It's not a big ask when you really think about it. It's just that we are not designed to do it. We're not conditioned and programmed to do it. We're programmed to operate against our interest. That's why so many billions go off into things that at the end of the day bring us very little. The feel good of the moment. We've got kids who are already lost the toys we bought them for Christmas. But if you plant the right identity in that kid, they won't lose it, and it will serve them for the rest of their lives, and they won't have to go through a bunch of things that we've had to go through. That's the power of it. That's what we're missing. And that's my challenge. There's this saying, is, help me help you. And that's where we're at. Help me help the community. Help me help the community. That's what I am challenging you to do. So look in the description box, click the link, and donate. If you are a person who prefers to donate via Cash App, the organization's Cash App account information is in the description box. If you want to get some of the things we are offering, like several of my books, the links are in there. I also have a mega book, a mega power book bundle, which is my 7 most requested titles out of my 25 book catalog. And just for the sake of mentioning it, I have more than 25 books. When I list a book as a book, it means it has a minimum of 200 pages and it's in full distribution. I have a lot more stuff out there that are published and in book form, but just not 200 pages. But so do something. But what I'm saying is, really, truly, if you have to look at this again, think about everything we're bringing to the table. Programs, research, dissemination of what we learn so that people can take it and use it in their lives. You get free videos of things that bring insight to you every day. I don't even, I think I have a membership thing to the site, but I don't even have anything to offer in the membership because I give everything that I have out as I give these videos. Um, you know, it's I don't ever want to get to where I'm holding life hostage. And when I mean life source, life energy, life knowledge hostage in order to support the ability to give life knowledge. To me, it's counterintuitive. But unfortunately, That's what a lot of people are doing. People are sitting up saying, if you want me to do this, you're going to have to pay me to do this, because it takes time, and it does. It takes so much time, energy, and effort to read, to research, to understand, to come talk to you for 45 minutes on things that are factual, that have merit. It takes that kind of time. And time costs, but it also costs to go out and work with these little boys. It costs to create programs. It costs to be able to sit up and say, okay, I can work with this person, I can work with this family, or I can do this, and I don't have to worry about not having the funds, not having the resources, or having to come out of my pocket to do it. If we can spend $500 billion over the holidays, we can support programs that are actually going to lift up us, our children, our families, our communities, and our race. That it's that simple. On that note, look, I'm going to get ready to get out of here. I appreciate you stopping by. I'm challenging you to support what we're doing. On that note, I'm out of here. You guys have an unbelievable day.